Thank you for having me again and putting up with me for so many years. So, very important thing that, and I think that our psychosocial team, which addresses our issues of our psyche, emotions, and also issues of social support, is not just the social workers, me, and mind body oncology coach. It is everybody at the Todd Cancer Institute. We really have the whole team really caring about you in the most supportive way possible. Of course, there are glitches, like we are human, so we mess up some from time to time. But the overarching goal is that we love what we do, and we love caring for you. So practically everybody has the same mindset. So all the physicians have the same mindset, all the nurse practitioners, all the other staff nurses, everybody has the same mindset. Not only that, people who work behind the scenes, who you may never see, also have the same mindset. So, that is the idea. Why? Because we know that going through cancer is a really very stressful event. So we want to make it as easy as possible on you, right? And so I've been at this institution for over 20 years, and actually Beat the Odds, the program that I introduced here in 2024. No, I'm sorry, what am I talking about? I wish. It was 2004. It was 2004. Beat the Odds, what is it? It is a 10-week program that it is in weekly sessions. Now they are done online for people not to have to rush to be there in person, or people who live in Catalina or maybe Orange County or simply hate traffic can participate. So, and the program is teaching skills of cancer survival. And we teach, in the first class, we teach 10 different skills. So, and we deepen them throughout the 10-week program. And so, because you see, we know that our mind and how we grow our support system affects not just the quality of our lives, right? But also longevity. And you may think, come on, when we are diagnosed with cancer, we have so many things on our plate that feels overwhelming and it is too much. And then you are telling me to go and commit myself to a 10-week program? No, that's too much. So, no, but I truly believe the sooner you get there, the better it works. We also have an application called Living Well that you may use on your own that is based on the Beat the Odds program. So right now we don't know we will be distributing the app, but we have that. And you may also think, okay, I'm already coping the best I can, so attending a class will help me? Yes, it will. Even if you are champion in something, you can always, champion of the world, you can always improve. And that is what champions do, and all of you are really champions. So thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here. And what she didn't say is that I'm also a breast cancer survivor, so I'm one of all of us. And I'm also a beneficiary of all of these programs. So I have to say that I've done Beat the Odds 3 times. I cannot tell you how magnificent it is. Dr. Verga, Aaron Somerville, they changed my life, and I'm sure they've changed your life as well. I wish everybody in the world could go through it because it's very special. And I also want to thank you, the people who mentored me when I had my own issues. But I'm here really to talk about the REACH study, which is a clinical trial that's looking at what is the benefit of the Gallery test for a Medicare population. And the Gallery test is a multi-cancer early cancer detection screen test. So a lot of words, right? Multi-cancer early detection test. But what it means is that with a single blood draw, the same way as you get a blood draw for anything else that you do, they look for 50 different kinds of cancer. So the best way to cure a cancer is to find it early. If we find it later, it's harder to cure. So we want to find cancers early. And 70% of the people who die of cancer in the United States die of the cancers for which there is no screening test. So no colon, no breast, etc. So this test is hoping to fill in that gap and find the other cancers early as well. And the test is commercially available and people are doing it out there, but it's $750 and insurance doesn't pay for it. So if you're a Medicare recipient and you wish to participate in the trial, you'll get the Gallery test at no cost for up to 3 times, 3 years. Maybe you don't qualify, you're not on Medicare, but maybe your parent or somebody you know qualifies. So if you're interested, please reach out to this lovely and charismatic man, Daryl Garman, and hopefully a lot of you can participate and be involved. So thank you so much for listening, and thanks to this program. And Susie Garrison, who's no longer here, Renee, and Randall, thanks. Okay.
Thank you, Randall. I was so excited when everyone came and said, will you speak? Will you speak? I'm like, yes, I would love to speak. And I do want to talk about quality, and thank you so much for coming today, because I believe quality, of course, in healthcare is what we're all seeking. Ultimately, we want the best outcomes. But first, I want to talk about musical theater. So, what does that have to do with healthcare, right? So our family is a huge musical theater family. My daughter at 3, she knew the script to Mamma Mia, the dances in Mamma Mia, the costumes, driving me crazy. But then it got really bad when she went behind the scenes and she saw backstage and what was really happening. That was it, forever and ever. That was her passion, right? Because the tech, the costumes, the props, I mean, everything, right? It's so much, and you could spend your whole life working on that craft. Well, that's kind of like healthcare. So yes, I'm going to tell you that we are just like musical theater. And we are. How many of you like musical theater, right? Oh, we all do. And it's the performing arts, really, the live performing arts, because when it's live, you get one shot, right? You got to prepare. You got to do all your stuff. And then, man, when you get on stage, that's it. You get one shot. If the electricity goes out, keep on dancing. If something happens and you forget your lines, keep on singing, right? Well, healthcare is just like that. We prepare for years and years and years. The physicians, the specialists, Rosalind, our dietitian, all of us go to school for so many years because we get one shot, especially in cancer care. We have to get it right. When you walk into the office, we want to make sure we've created the best treatment plan and we have the highest quality. And that takes years of preparation, just like in musical theater. So, I know Randall's like, hurry up, Lisa, you're never going to get through this in 15 minutes. I am, because this is just an example of how we do quality. So, Commission on Cancer Program Goal 7.4. Every year, we have so many accreditations and regulations in healthcare, as I'm sure you're aware, right? We have the ACR, American College of Radiology, for anything imaging. We have Commission on Cancer, which is part of the American College of Surgeons. We have NAPBC, which Randall mentioned before, for our breast program. I could go on and on. The FDA even gets their hand in mammography, right? So we are highly regulated, and we have so many rules and policies and regulations. But that's okay, because that's our script. That's just like in theater, that's our script, that's where we start. But how do we do all of that? How do we pull it together? And it's not just, a few people. For Todd Cancer Institute, it's probably a good 200 to 250 folks across this campus every day that has a piece of this. And that's what we're going to show you, is how do we pull it together, and how does it make sense for the very, even if we have a part-time person that comes in once a month, how do they even contribute, right? Everybody has to have a piece of what we do for high quality. So the 6 essential pillars was a project we put together last year for our program goal. Next slide, please. And what we said to the Commission on Cancer was, we're going to show you how our entire cancer program, we have 10 units. Oh, am I not? Green. I hit the green. Thank you. So we're going to show you how we, every single day, every single one of us that work in Todd Cancer Institute are on the front line, and we're aligning to make the best cancer program that there is, because we want quality, safety, patient experience is what experience is. We want an engaged workforce because we like to have fun at work and we like to come to work. I'm kind of like, my daughter loves musical theater. Oncology is kind of like that for me. I can't wait to get to work in the morning. We want growth and access so that you can access our services. And then, of course, we want to be good stewards of our resources. So we created this goal. And it was, how are we going to show in a visible way that we work on things in every single unit, every single day that lead to quality, safety, stewardship, all of these things. And we wanted to show how we did it across all 10 units of TCI, whether you're in genetics or the clinic or the breast center, or whether you're in the infusion center or in radiation oncology. How do we all play ball together as a team? And that's very important to the COC. They want to see how the program works together correctly. So in the olden days, 5 years ago, in the middle of COVID, we started with these boards, right, that we put up in every unit. And we had a few boards. I think we only had 6. And we had maybe 3 metrics on each board. Well, last year we're going to go for it. We're going to have all 6 metrics, 1 for each of those 6 pillars, and we're going to put them in every single unit. So it doesn't matter where you work or who you are in TCI, you get to be part of this fun adventure. So we created and implemented the boards. We decided we were going to have 10. We decided that not only do all the leaders of TCI, including myself, round once a week and go to every unit and talk about what's happening in that unit, but our executive team also, they get to play now in the sandbox last year. They're going to come once a month, and they're also going to round in all the units and see what we're doing. So here's pictures of our boards. So if any of you have been in TCI, have you seen these boards and wondered what the heck they are? Anybody? They're right now, you probably didn't even notice them. It's just like when, you don't have kids and you're in the grocery store and you never notice all the kids, and then you have a baby and then you're like, oh my God, there's babies everywhere, right? Now when you walk through TCI, you're gonna see these boards everywhere, and you're gonna be like, I know what those are, because they're in plain sight. They're in the hallways, they're right in the clinical areas, because that's on purpose, because we want you to know what we're doing every day for you. So we set up our boards in all the areas. We assign people each of the metrics, and then we meet. This was one of our huddles on some of our original boards in the breast center and in the infusion center, and we talk about all the members of each unit. How are we doing on different things? Are we doing good? Are we doing bad? I mean, when it's red, that means we got work to do on that one. You know what? We get excited. And you know why we get excited? Because that means we can fix it. And so each member is empowered to fix things so that we can get better. So some of our feedback as we did our adventure, the executive teams came around. We got all kinds of fun feedback on how it showed we had programmatic alignment. We were in radiation oncology, and one of those team members was like, wow, this story is awesome. We can see how it's integrated with their infusion and with their physician up in the clinic and all the players, even rehab. They work with us, they're integrated into our program, right? So we got great feedback every month as all the executive players came and saw our boards too, and we talked about our story. These are just some examples. You don't have to know all of these. You're wondering, like, what kind of things do you guys follow? What's on that board? We look at everything from, how much time does it take us to get you a mammo on the schedule? How much time is it from when you get your biopsy to your surgery? We look at all types of auditing processes for biohazards and any kind of high-risk procedure. We look at there's a million things on there, right? There's quality for our positioning. How well do we position you when you get your mammo? It has to be perfect so we can diagnose you perfectly. We do falls, we do infection prevention, we do so many things that we're looking at, and these are just a few. These are just a few that some of the teams have followed through last year. So how did we meet our expectations last year? We had our 10 boards across all of TCI. We had leaders galore, rounding, and it's really fun. We go for an hour and a half on Tuesday mornings, and we go to every unit, we find out everything that's going on, and then we're like, ooh, maybe we should follow that metric. Maybe we need to get better in that area. And it's feedback from you all too. When we hear things from the patients and the families, when we see things on Press Ganey, we want to make sure we're addressing some of the things. Even parking, even the parking costs, right? That was on one of our boards because we know that sometimes that can be a concern. We continuously monitored and mentored our staff. We solidified our alignment between all the program pieces, and then we did improve many key indicators. So these are examples of some of the metrics that we worked on and improved, just high level, right? Cancer staging, did we put it in the chart in the right place? That's a big one. If it's not in the chart in the right place, you might have been staged, but that drives a whole bunch of stuff in Epic. So we're even looking at that level of where did we put your cancer staging? Functional assessment, the team's favorite. I have a soft space in my heart for the onc rehab team because I'm also a lymphedema therapist, a physical therapist. That was my prior life many years ago. So functional assessment, that's all about, you know what, we don't want to just make sure your cancer is addressed. We want you to be able to live the quality life and do all the things you want to do through that journey and after, because that's really what's most important, in my opinion. We want you well, but we also want you to live a happy, functional life. So are we doing assessment? Are we making sure where you're at on a functional level? Growth and access, delays in care. We looked at this in so many areas, and we've done a lot of work in those areas, and we have more work to do because we know we're growing. Infection prevention. So we do little swab tests. We go around all of TCI and we swab to see, are there any, I call them germajoids, and my family makes fun of me. That's what the germies are, they're germajoids. And where are they, and do we have too many? Whether it's in the clinic chair, on the mat in the rehab center, whether it's in the breast center on one of the trays, everywhere. We go and it's random, and guess who does that? You're never going to guess. It's the genetics counselors, because they're integrated with our program, and they're the ones that track our infection control and our infection prevention for all of TCI. Imaging, I mentioned that one, the positioning collaboratives that we do. So what are our next steps? We want to continue tracking all of these indicators for all of our patients and families. We want to continue. We have to get better every single day. Healthcare is challenging. It's not easy some days, but we want to do the very best we can. So we will continue on our journey. We'll continue mentoring our staff because every single one of them is involved in this. And I'm just excited to present this because when we have our survey this fall for the Commission on Cancer and we show them what we did last year for our program goal, I think they're going to have a lot of good comments and a lot of good questions. So thank you all. Any questions?
Hi, everybody. My name's Roslyn. I'm so grateful to be here with you guys today, and I hope you are too. I just want to start and say nutrition is so important, and it's especially important for cancer. And so that's really why I'm here. I'm so passionate about it, and I just really want to share it with you. Before we get started,
I'm so sorry. You can push this green button to advance slides.
oh yes, thank you. So I want to explain a little bit about me. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I am dedicated to supporting patients at Todd Cancer Institute at MemorialCare Long Beach. I have a master's degree in nutrition science, and I've maintained a certification as a dietitian for over 10 years, and I've been working with oncology for 7 years. So most of what I do is nutrition counseling. So we discuss therapeutic diets, lifestyle modification, management of nutrition impact symptoms from cancer treatment, and nutrition support when necessary, like tube feeding or TPN, which is also called IV nutrition. So I want to share this important fact with you. Sorry, how do I go back? Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I got it. I want to share this with you because this is so important. In the United States, there are 2 million new cancer diagnoses every year, and 40% of cancers are attributed to modifiable lifestyle risk factors such as tobacco use, alcohol consumption, poor diet, overweight and obesity, and physical inactivity. That's powerful, right? That feels like maybe you have some control. Now, if a cancer diagnosis becomes a reality, because we just heard how common it is, nutrition during cancer treatment becomes paramount. So we need to maintain your weight and support the immune system to withstand treatment. Then, if you've already received treatment, diet continues to play a notable role in influencing recurrence risk. And that's why today I'm going to explain the top 10 nutrition and lifestyle recommendations to reduce cancer risk and recurrence, based on the guidelines from the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute of Cancer Research. But I'm also going to provide strategies on how you can make changes to meet these recommendations. And for the sake of time, I won't discuss research or support these recommendations with a bunch of studies and clinical jargon, but please know that everything I recommend is backed by science. All right, so the first recommendation is to maintain a healthy weight. The reason is weight gain over time, particularly when it leads to overweight or obesity, can increase the risk for over 13 types of cancer. So do your best to maintain a healthy weight, and this is really defined in 2 ways: BMI and waist circumference. So you probably heard of BMI. It measures your weight for your height, and the ideal range is 18.5 to 24.9. But keep in mind that BMI has limitations, right? It doesn't account for muscle mass, so if you have a lot of muscle mass, that's actually a good thing, even if it puts you in the overweight or obese range, right? So another way to check if your weight is in a healthy range is by measuring your waist circumference. And this helps you determine if you have too much fat around your waist and whether you're at higher health risk. So we want to aim for a waist circumference for women less than 31.5 inches and for men less than 37 inches. So how can we do this? Well, we have strong evidence that the following things can help you maintain a healthy weight: staying physically active, meeting your fiber goals by eating high fiber foods often, such as fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and nuts and seeds, eating a Mediterranean-style diet, which is typically high fiber foods, all the ones I just mentioned, as well as olive oil, moderate amounts of fish, poultry, and dairy, and small amounts of red meats. So for more guidance in maintaining a healthy weight, please work with a registered dietitian who has training to help you manage this. All right, so the next recommendation is to be physically active. And really, the more the better. So whether you're a weekend warrior or you do it daily, the overall goal is to spend more time moving. Now, scientists are still investigating how physical activity reduces cancer risk, but studies show that regular activity can help to maintain healthy hormone levels, improve insulin sensitivity, meaning your body uses insulin more effectively to regulate your blood sugar. It reduces inflammation in the body, it helps move food through the digestive system more quickly, and it can minimize treatment-related side effects like fatigue and nausea. The American Cancer Society and others, they do recommend 150 to 300 minutes per week of moderate intense activity, and that's 70% of your maximum heart rate, or 75 to 150 minutes of very active or vigorous activity, and that's per week as well. And then for bone and muscle preservation, it's also important to include 2 days per week of strength training, if at all possible. So how can we do this? Well, we can start by limiting the amount of time that we spend sitting during the day, And then find movement that you enjoy and do it regularly. To stay committed to this, try to schedule it in your calendar, sign up for a group class, or ask a friend to join you. And then if you need more support with physical activity, I do recommend meeting with an exercise physiologist or a physical therapist. The next recommendation is to eat a plant-rich diet. So we have very strong evidence that a diet filled with a variety of plant foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds can lower the risk of many cancers and increase overall health and immunity. So plant foods not only provide essential vitamins and minerals that our body needs, but they also contain phytochemicals like flavonoids, polyphenols, isoflavones, and carotenoids. And these have antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and anti-cancer properties that protect our cells from damage caused by environmental toxins. So they also hinder the development of cancer by preventing DNA damage. They can also repair mutated genes, slow cancer growth, and help abnormal cells die more quickly. Keep in mind that a plant-rich diet does not mean the exclusion of animal foods. It simply means rich in plants. So how can we do this? The general guideline is to make 2/3 of your plate plants and 1/3 or less animal foods. And that's like meat and dairy. So the picture on the slide is from the American Academy of Nutrition, and they recommend that most people fill half their plate with fruits and vegetables, about 1/4 with grains and protein, and then a serving of dairy. And dairy can be included anywhere throughout the day, but they just include it here because the general recommendation is 3 servings of dairy per day for most people. The next recommendation is to limit ultra-processed foods, and specifically ones that are high in saturated fat, sodium, and added sugar, because if these are consumed often or in large amounts, they may contribute to nutrient imbalances, weight gain, and obesity. So ultra-processed foods are foods that contain ingredients that you wouldn't normally use at home. So they have additives like preservatives, sweeteners, artificial colors, and stabilizers. They often have a long shelf life. And they're foods like ice cream, sausages, or processed meats, chips, and instant soups. So, at the same time, we want to say that just because we say an ultra-processed food, we don't really consider how nutritious the food is. So instead of just saying, I'm not going to eat any ultra-processed foods, we really need to just focus on limiting the ones that are really high in saturated fat, sugar, and salt. So examples of ultra-processed foods that are not harmful can be marinara, pasta sauce, or whole grain breads and cereals, or even plant-based milks and yogurt. So how can we do this? Well, the best thing to do is to look at a nutrition label, right? So specifically, you want to look at the right, where most people don't pay attention to. But that percentage right there is the daily value. So if you look at that percentage for saturated fat, you want to aim for less than 5%. So saturated fat, sodium, and added sugar, we want all of those to be less than 5% ideally if you're going to eat that food often. If it's high, and that's described as more than 20%, then try to eat those foods less frequently. The nutrients that you want to really be high on the nutrition label would be dietary fiber, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and potassium, and those are at the bottom. So if that's more than 20%, that's a really nutrient-dense option, and that might be an example of a ultra-processed food that's okay. The next recommendation is to limit red meat. So the reason is eating too much red meat can increase your risk of colorectal cancer because it contains a substance called heme, and this gives it its color. Heme can trigger the formation of cancer-causing compounds, which have been shown to damage the lining of the bowel and contribute to bowel cancer. So what's red meat? Red meat is beef, pork, veal, lamb, horse, and goat, if you eat all those. But the recommendation is to limit those to 12 to 18 ounces of cooked weight per week, and that's, again, to reduce colorectal cancer. So how you can do this is choosing fish, chicken, turkey, eggs, beans, tofu, and when you choose red meat, aim for smaller portions and allow it to go further by bulking it up with beans, chickpeas, lentils, or mushrooms. We do need to completely avoid processed meat as much as possible. The reason is global research shows that people who regularly eat processed meat have a 16% increased risk of developing bowel cancer for every 50 gram serving that they eat. 50 grams is just 3 slices of bacon or 2 slices of ham or 1 sausage. That's pretty impactful. This is why I'm saying completely avoid it if possible. Processed meat is any type of meat that's transformed by salting, curing, fermentation, smoking, or chemical preservations, such as nitrites or nitrates, but it also includes alternatives like celery seed or celery salt. So it's not enough if it just says nitrate-free. These include deli meats, bacon, sausages, hot dogs, and chorizo, just to name a few. So how can we limit these and what can we replace it with? In sandwiches, wraps, salads, where we usually use processed meats, we can choose rotisserie chicken, canned fish, and canned fish is okay. I know it seems like it's maybe a processed meat, but it's a different preservation method, so it is okay. Boiled eggs, peanut butter, leftover home-cooked meat. So if you just had cooked a fresh turkey or chicken, you can cut that up and put it on your sandwich instead. Plant-based meat alternatives are great options as well. And tofu, tempeh, chickpeas, cheese, and roasted vegetables are other ways that you can substitute. All right, so the next one is to limit added sugars, especially sugar-sweetened drinks. And why is that? Well, we have strong evidence that regularly drinking sugar-sweetened drinks can lead to weight gain, and that's over time because they contain high amounts of added sugar. So what's added sugar? It's sugar that's been added to foods during processing or just plain packaged sweeteners like sucrose or white sugar, glucose, fructose, dextrose. If you're reading the nutrition label, there's going to be so many, but corn syrup, maltose, honey, maple syrup, agave, hydrolyzed starch, or invert sugar. These we should really try to limit. You can still have some, and I'll explain that, but we should try to limit this. Natural sugar, on the other hand, is going to be naturally occurring, and this is found in fruits, vegetables, milk, and grains. Remember, these are good. These are okay. We should not have to limit these. The dietary guidelines for Americans state that less than 10% of calories or 50 grams from added sugar should be limited per day. But the World Cancer Research Fund and other cancer organizations go further and say, to avoid weight gain over time, we should be aiming for less than 30 grams of added sugar per day. The American Heart Association goes even further and says, no, we need to limit this to less than 6% of calories from added sugar per day, and that's equivalent to about 25 grams or 6 teaspoons of sugar for women, and 36 grams or 9 teaspoons for men, and that's per day. So again, you can have some, but we do want to limit it. So how can you do this? Well, you can try to read nutrition labels. So you can see this nutrition label and all nutrition labels now have to state how much added sugar is included in the food. So you want to look at the bottom and see how much added sugar, and remember that you should be aiming for less than 30 grams per day. So think about it in that context and decide if you want to do that. You could also try to choose foods that are very low in added sugars or just contain no added sugar. There are a lot more of these foods becoming available because this is what people want. The other thing you could do is use natural sugars like fruit or applesauce or other fresh fruits. to sweeten foods instead of using added sugar. And then when you're baking and it calls for sugar, you can cut down the amount of sugar to make it less sweet. And then always when you have beverages, try to drink water or unsweetened drinks rather than sugar-sweetened drinks. All right, so it's best to avoid alcohol because drinking any amount of alcohol increases our risk of at least 7 different types of cancer, and that's mouth, throat, esophagus, liver, breast, and bowel cancer. And this is because when alcohol is broken down in the body, compounds are formed that directly damage the DNA, and that can lead to cancer. So for prevention and even survivorship, alcohol does not offer any benefits, and there is no safe level of consumption. Now, if you do consume alcoholic drinks, it's best to follow the dietary guidelines, and they state that we aim for less than 1 drink per day for women and 2 drinks or less per day for men. So how can we do this? We can choose non-alcoholic drinks or try to dilute alcoholic drinks with sugar-free calorie mixers or soda water. Mocktails are becoming more fun and provided at restaurants, so there are other alternatives, to make that ritual enjoyable. All right, so it's best not to use supplements for cancer prevention. We have no evidence that a supplement can prevent cancer. So for most people, eating a healthy, balanced diet that's rich in plant foods is more likely to protect against cancer. Now, there are times when a supplement may be advised to correct a proven or suspected nutrient deficiency, but in general, we want to avoid taking supplements to prevent cancer. Supplements give you a much higher dose of nutrients than what you would normally get from eating a food alone, and these high doses can be harmful. They can also influence cancer risk. So that's just something to think about. More is not better, usually. The FDA does not regulate supplements as well. So if you do need a supplement that's been recommended, be sure that it's third-party tested. So you'll see this on the nutrition label. It will say USP or NSF, and that will tell you that a third party has tested that product for purity and safety, and you can feel more confident that there's no toxins or something else that's in that supplement because that's totally unregulated. So how can you do this? Try to get your nutrients through food instead of supplements. And if you do question adequacy, consult a doctor or dietitian, preferably both, and try to get lab work or extensive diet analysis. The last one is to breastfeed. We have strong evidence that breastfeeding your baby can reduce the mother's risk of breast and ovarian cancer. So it does that by reducing the exposure of some cancer-related hormones in the body, and it helps to remove any cells in your breast that have been damaged or have DNA damage. So how you do this? You do your best if you're of childbearing age. So I've just mentioned 10 nutrition and lifestyle recommendations to reduce your risk of cancer and cancer recurrence. So I want you to think about these things as 10 tools in your toolbox. I want you to do your best to meet these recommendations and reach out to your support team to help you get there. If you need some more support, I am at Todd Cancer Institute. I do in-person nutrition counseling, like I mentioned. I do require a referral, and you do have to be going to Todd Cancer Institute, so I'm dedicated to that facility. I just need a referral from a nurse practitioner or a doctor. My contact information is here. If you have any questions about the presentation or nutrition in general, after, you can certainly email me, or if you have questions now, please raise your hand.
Yeah, Rosalind, we have 10 minutes for questions if y'all have questions.
Yes.
Is xylitol an acceptable sweetener?
Yes. Xylitol is actually wonderful for dental health. It moistens the mouth. It does not prevent dental caries. It's a sugar substitute. So if you have a lot of xylitol candies or gum, you might get some GI side effects. But for the most part, a few servings a day is fantastic.
I love that Karen, a registered dental hygienist, right, asked the question about sugar substitutes.
Yeah, xylitol.
Okay. I'm going to come to you if you have a question, because we do have time. Okay, Nikki,
I was just going to add that xylitol is really good too if you have dry mouth, which I feel like I have right now because I've been talking, but it's really helpful if you have that too.
Can people get a referral from you, from your office, or Randall, for dietitians that are not in this area, like San Diego, Carlsbad, etc.?
I can reach out to some sources.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and you know what? Online you might be able to find some too through the Academy of Nutrition.
Thank you.
That was Mentor Nikki Wright who asked that good question. Who else? Oh, way in the back. Okay, who am I coming to? I got a sprint back there. Okay, and there's Jackie also. Okay, first we're going to take you. We need more than one mic. I'm sorry. Getting my steps in, ladies and gentlemen. Okay.
Hi, you said to avoid supplements. Is a daily probiotic considered a supplement?
Say it again?
If you take a daily probiotic, or prebiotic, is that considered a supplement?
Yes, but probiotics, we should match the right probiotic for the right reason because they all contain different strains. So it's debatable whether that's useful, right? It can be in certain situations, and I do recommend it sometimes, but you can also get it from fermented foods like sauerkraut, yogurt, certain types of cheese like cottage cheese. Tempeh is another one, like miso paste. So I do recommend daily intake of fermented foods for optimal GI health, but sometimes, probiotics are okay, and I do recommend them. It's not going to influence your cancer risk, though. So you can take that, and it won't be detrimental for cancer risk. It's usually vitamins that can be detrimental.
Heidi Swanson had a question, and I'm going to point out again, it's Heidi and Pat Witt who donated the flowers here today. Yet again, they've done this for many years. Oh, look at Pat. She's giving me the side eye. Go ahead.
I was just curious what your stance is on honey versus sugar. Since it's not processed, is it the same limit?
Yeah. So honey is still considered an added sugar. So, it has very, very small amounts of minerals, and it has antimicrobial effects, antiviral effects, right? It has some wonderful things, but we still should treat it as an added sugar and count it in that 30 grams or less per day.
I'm coming to you. Kathy Fagan. Okay. Oh, this is because Kathy used to work here as a dietitian, so of course they know each other.
Hi, Rosalind.
You're sitting there the whole time.
Yes. I have a question about vitamin D3 and omega-3 fatty acids. You said some vitamin supplements are detrimental. What do you think of those two?
Well, those two are essential, right? They're very important that we get this in the diet. But we still want to not overdo it, right? So if you are deficient in vitamin D, then I would absolutely recommend a vitamin D supplement, but we still have to be careful because there's an optimal range. Some people can overdo it. So always good to check in with your doctor, dietitian, about how much vitamin D you're taking and get it checked, every year, every few years, just to make sure you're in that healthy range. And then omega-3s, very important. They're essential, right? So you get them from fatty, oily fish like tuna, salmon, trout, sardines, anchovies, mackerel, Pacific oysters. They're essential. So we need to eat at least 8 ounces of fatty, oily fish per week. I prefer that people get it from the diet, get it from there, but if maybe you're vegan, that would be okay to take a supplement around 500 milligrams per day of algae oil or fish oil if you're not a vegan.
Very good. I didn't even know about algae oil, so that's good to know. Dr. Cindy Jen has a question. Dr. Jen is also one of our mentors.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. It was fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Just a quick question about smoked salmon. Does that fall under processed meats, or it is a salmon as well? But the processing.
I know,
or the
that's a
smoking-
hard one. Because it's a smoked, preserved meat, it is considered a processed meat. Otherwise, salmon is an excellent choice.
Damn.
I know.
That is not the answer I wanted, Rosalind
I'm
Carey.
really sorry. I didn't make the rules.
Yeah, I know. You already hit me with the avoid alcohol, which, did you hear the murmuring here?
Yeah, I did.
Hi, I have first a statement. I find it a little ironic and annoying that obesity is a problem with cancer, right? And yet I'm taking a hormone blocker that is making me gain weight. So how do you fix, and I've been trying really hard to lose weight. What do you recommend for that?
Yeah, good question.
Well, it's very unfortunate. I'm sorry. I hear this all the time. It doesn't mean you're powerless, though. You still can do things with your diet, and so it's really important to meet with a dietitian who's trained in these things to help you manage that. And you just do your best, right? You know, there's only so much you can do. You can't starve yourself, you know. You have to eat, but you have to just do your best to make healthy choices. But this is a very common side effect, and I'm sorry. But again, try to meet with a dietitian to do whatever it is that you can.
Okay, that's an excellent question, very pertinent. Thank you. Okay, I'll be right with you, Gal. Okay.
Hi. After losing my hair to chemo and then it growing back horribly, I started Nutrafol. What are your feelings of the supplements in that?
What is it?
Nutrafol? No?
Oh, Nutrafol.
Yeah.
Oh. So
don't say it's bad. It's working.
I know.
Well,
I know.
yeah.
It does work sometimes for people. Unfortunately, it can make your liver enzymes go up, and so I would just make sure that you take the least effective dose and get your labs done to check your liver enzymes, because it's high amounts of those nutrients in there, and it could cause liver damage. There's been several reports of that. So take less, get your labs done, keep monitoring it. That's the best. And there's following a healthy diet can help with hair growth too, right? So you can get biotin from eggs. You don't always have to take a hair, skin, and nails supplement to meet your goal, right? Sometimes adequate nutrition can be just as helpful.
Rosalind, a
Thank you.
lot of tough love going around here today, but thank you.
I just wondered if you'd heard of the Yuka app, where you can scan your food item and it will tell you whether it's bad or good.
Yeah,
and
which
what do you think
app
of it?
was it again?
Yuka, Y-U-K-A.
Oh, yes. I haven't used it. I've heard some negative things about it, like it's not always consistent. But yeah, I mean, it could be good. I'm sure there's some benefit to it. My fear with some of those scanning apps is that we have to look at the source and make sure that, their guidelines are adequate. I feel like sometimes it can cause a little bit of fear-mongering. So, yeah, that's one I should look more into. But I would just proceed with caution, and always, when you're going to look for nutrition information, get it from a dietitian or, American Cancer Society or the National Institutes of Health or the World Health Organization, trusted sources that are backed by science. With those apps, it just can be, who created the app, who's giving that information. And so if that's available, I would look at that.
Okay, Rosalind, we have a question over here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Janie wanted me to ask if bee pollen is beneficial or harmful.
What is it?
Bee pollen? Is bee pollen?
Bee pollen.
Beneficial or harmful?
As like.
Because we see people selling it at farmers markets.
Yeah.
And they say it'll clean up your skin.
Right, it's like the little yellow
They have
seeds, yes.
But then they also sell pills, I understand.
I'm not familiar with the pills, but bee pollen itself is fine. That's totally fine. If you're sprinkling it on your yogurt or, fruit and things like that, that's totally fine. I don't know about the supplement, though. I would have to, again, look at, I don't know. I don't know about bee pollen and the benefits. I'm assuming that there may be some similarities with honey, but I'd have to look into it more. Good question, though.
Thank you, Rosalind. I think we have time for one more question.
One more over here.
Okay, go ahead, Janie.
My question is about beans. I hear a lot of controversy that beans are good, beans aren't good, and I'm specifically thinking of Dr. Gundry's books. And he
yes.
is saying that because I think it's lipids in the beans.
Hey, Janie's asking about beans.
It's lectins. So there's this whole argument against lectins. When we cook foods that have lectins, they're reduced. There's no issue. They're not toxic, right? We cook beans. We cook tomatoes most of the time. But they're not harmful raw or cooked. But just to give you some background, like they go down when we cook. So beans are very, very valuable. Unless you have like a severe reaction to beans, and even I would challenge that, all of us should be eating at least one serving of beans per day, and that's primarily to increase our fiber and magnesium amounts in our diet. But beans are like the new superfood, so we should all be eating them. There's no downside, and lectins certainly are not a downside of,
We're going to have one more question over here with Antoinette, and then I'd ask you to email your questions to Rosalind, rcary, R-C-A-R-Y, at memorialcare.org, if that's okay. Antoinette Greer is here. Let me tell you, Antoinette years ago, is a cancer survivor, but founded My Sister, My Friend here in Long Beach, a longtime partner. Over the years, ladies and gentlemen, we have listened to what you are interested in knowing more about as cancer patients and survivors. One of the ways we have met those needs is to work with our community partners, many of whom are here today. Antoinette is one of them. With My Sister, My Friend, so is Black Women for Wellness, so is Cancer Support Community South Bay, so is SHARE, S-H-A-R-E, for gynecologic cancers. That's how we have extended our reach over the years, by listening to you and responding to what you want to learn more about. Anyway, Antoinette, sorry, I digress. Excuse me. Do you have a question?
I think you spent my 2 minutes. I think you spent. I have a hard time sometimes defending the red wine theory, with red wine being good for the heart, but I know it's not good for breast cancer survivors.
Yes.
So what do we want to say to them when we talk about red wine being good for the heart, but not good for us to consume at all?
Well, it has ethanol. So ethanol is the reason why alcohol is so detrimental for cancer. So you can just say that, red wine may have some benefits for heart health or in other cases, but it's not beneficial for cancer because of the ethanol.
Darn it.
And Dr. Sachdev will be talking about more about alcohol after lunch as well. So Rosalind, thank you so much for educating us and letting us have your presence here today.
Well, hello, guys. So I can spend, next slide, please, while I'm thinking about it. I could spend 10 minutes talking about the benefits of yoga and going through each one individually and showing you more about that. Or I can take my 10 minutes and we can play. And that sounds more inviting to me, to play. So I want you guys to move your chairs away from the table. Get where you've got some room. So you're not going to conk the person next to you. But be able to move a little bit. And if you're short, like I am, if you sit in this chair, my feet don't touch the ground. So you may want to sit where you can reach a little bit. Sit forward. And have your feet where they're kind of, you feel balanced, okay? And otherwise, I want you to think about your posture. I don't want this slumpy, slouchy stuff. I want us to be sitting upright, nice and tall. Okay? Now, from here, your arms can go wherever they'd like. If you want them in your lap, if you want them at your sides, your choice. But I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to start to notice what's happening. I want you to come a little bit inside. I want you to notice what your body is going through. I want you to notice, do you have both of your sits bones on your chair? Or are you kind of leaning to one side? What about where are your shoulders? If your shoulders are kind of up here about your ears, I want you to let them come down. Now you've got your eyes closed, I want you to think about your breath. Think about your breathing. Notice, is your inhale breath the same amount of time as your exhale breath? I want to change it. So what I want you to do is to take a huge breath in through the nose. Fill your lungs with air as far as you can, and then sigh it out. Let it all go. On the next breath, I want you to think about 3-part breath. I want you to feel your belly rise, your ribs expand, and as even more air comes in, your chest will rise. As you exhale, you're bringing that belly button to your spine, and you're letting it all out. So on this nice big breath, ready? Take a huge breath in, belly, chest, ribs, and exhaling it out. We have one more breath here, making it the biggest that you can. Fill those lungs completely full, and then you let it out. Go ahead and open your eyes. As you open your eyes, I want you again to notice how you're sitting. I want you to drop your chin to your chest. Feel the nice stretch through your back of your neck. And then look to the ceiling, looking up, stretching through the front. And again, dropping the chin to your chest. And then looking up to the ceiling. Let your head return back to neutral. From here, let's take the right ear to your shoulder, to your right shoulder. Nice stretch on that side. Come back to neutral, and then we go the left, the other way. Left ear to the left shoulder. And then back up. One more time to the right, right ear to your right shoulder. Now you're going to drop your chin and let it roll up to the left. So you're making a half circle. Now you're going to return back to the other side. Nice, easy stretching through the whole thing. One more time, all the way, roll it to the left. And then you roll it to the right. And return it back to neutral. This time we're going to take a complete circle. So you're going to go right ear to your right shoulder. Drop it down, roll it to the left, and roll all the way behind. Go the other way. All the way down and rolling it back. Come back to the center. So leaving our neck, I want you to take your fingers and I want you to open them up very wide. Feeling as you're going to do both sides. I've got only one. So you're going to stretch through those web spaces. And then I want you to draw it into a fist. And again, opening those fingers up really, really wide, stretching through, and drawing it in. Maybe we do some circles with our wrists. Go a little bit one way, go the other way. And then you're just going to flick your hands. Get the blood flowing in there and shake them out. Our next one is to take your hands to your shoulders. And you're going to start making circles. Start little, both together. And you get bigger and bigger as you circle those shoulders. Maybe you're able to bring your elbows way up here by your ears. Really feel that stretch. Take them way back there. And then you go the other way. Again, starting with little, growing big. And we relax the arms back down to your lap. Leaving your shoulders now, you're going to take your legs, your hip. We're going to bring one leg up and circle it around. So it's working on the hip mobility here. Just circling your hip. Do a few one direction, and then we go the other way. Left. Okay, now the other way. Let's go back to the right leg, circling that hip. And then the left. And then let them relax. See, that's what I meant. You had to make sure you have lots of room there. So now, as we go ahead and you're going to kick one leg out straight, straighten that knee. And then we're going to point and flex the toe. Up and down, up and down. How about a circle there? How about a circle there? And then we switch to the other side. Kicking that leg out, straightening it out, pointing and flexing, circling the foot. And then let the knee come back down. One more time on the right, kicking it out. Toes up and down. Circling that foot. Go the other way. And let it back. And then the left, kicking it out. Up and down with the foot. Circle. And then reverse. And then let it relax. So now again, I want you closing your eyes one more time. I want you to draw yourself inside. Notice what you feel. Can you feel the stability and the underneath your feet? Do you feel the structures that you're standing on? The floor, is it nice and sturdy? How about your chair? Very supportive. But I want you to notice what's happening inside your body. Definitely your circulation has improved. Definitely, hopefully our flexibility is improving. Continuing to do these exercises will definitely develop your strength. Okay? But the breath, look how important your breath is. So again, open your eyes. And on the next time, this time, as you inhale, I want your arms to reach all the way up to the ceiling. Reaching as high as you comfortably can do. And as you exhale, then bringing your hands back into your heart center. Okay, again, reaching up as far as you can when you inhale. And as you exhale, letting them down. So we have one more, reaching up all the way to the ceiling. If you can, bring your hands together, flip them over. Kind of try to frame your ears here. Now I want you to lean to the right. So you're stretching through your side. Come back up to the middle. And then we go to the left. Come back to the center. Exhale, bring your arms back down. Okay, again, inhale, reach with those hands all the way up to the ceiling. Follow them up there. Again, clasping your hands together and you flip them over. Frame your ears, and let's lean to the right. I guess I should go your way. And then up to the center, and then to the left. And then come back to the middle, and then draw your hands back down through heart center. How you guys doing, okay? So this is what chair yoga is. It's not strenuous, it's not hard. You make it what you can, okay? So now that we've got your blood flowing a little bit and you're moving around, let's twist to the right. Look over that right shoulder.
Gay, I'm so sorry, but we're at time.
No! One more.
I know.
One more thing. One more thing.
I know. The whole room is going to rebel. It's going to mutiny.
Just one more. All the way to the other side. And then come back to the center. So from here, guys, you have a handout on your table. It has probably about a 20-minute, 30-minute exercise routine if you'd like. Do it. Do it in the morning. Do it in the evening. Do it whenever you're available. But the one thing that a yoga class does, every class ends with a saying called namaste. Okay? So what namaste means is the light in me sees the light in you. So with that in mind, may the long time sun shine upon you. All the love surround you. The light in you guide you on your way. Namaste.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you, Renee and Randall, for having me. My name is Dr. Sachdev, and today I'll be talking about breast and gynecologic cancer survivorship care. So just a quick outline of my talk today. Many of you are probably familiar with a lot of these topics, but I will be talking about screening guidelines, toxicity management, both conventional and integrative approaches, lifestyle management, and a little bit of on vitamin D. Epidemiology. So there's been a decline in breast cancer mortality rates as the years have gone on, with a 5-year survival rate now of 90%. Breast cancer survivors make up the largest constituent of all cancer survivors, and they make up about 3.6% of the US population. There's 44 million people living with breast cancer worldwide. For gynecologic cancer, uterine mortality rates have actually been increasing at about 1.5% annually since 2013. This is thought mostly to be due to a rise in obesity and metabolic syndrome. 5-year survival rate is 81%. Ovarian cancer mortality rates have remained stable with a 5-year survival rate of about 51%, and cervical cancer mortality rates have actually decreased due to better screening and better screening programs and HPV vaccination efforts, with a 5-year survival rate of 67%. So I'm going to talk about screening guidelines for each of the types of cancers. So with breast cancer, mammography is still the gold standard of breast cancer screening in survivors. So the first post-treatment mammogram is done 6 months after radiation therapy or surgery if radiation is omitted. And then it's done, we typically do it every 6 months for the first 2 years and then annually thereafter. More frequent screening later on is not indicated unless there's something abnormal that shows up on the screening mammogram. There's no routine breast imaging after mastectomy. After mastectomy, the main areas where you can have recurrence after reconstruction is in the pectoralis muscle or right below the skin and the subcutaneous tissue. So physical exam is still the gold standard for that. So clinical breast exams every 6 months for the first 3 years, and then every 6 to 12 months for the next 2 years, and then annually. We do recommend self breast exams monthly. You know your body the best, and so if you notice any changes, that you'll notice it on a self-exam as well. So I often get asked about MRI or ultrasound for screening. A lot of women have their breast cancer discovered on an MRI, and then on a follow-up MRI after the mammogram. So there's a thought that why not do MRIs? So multiple studies have actually shown no benefit with routine screening with MRI in breast cancer survivors. So we still will just do the annual mammography. And with ultrasound, there's an increase in false positive rates. The MRI is only done if there's something abnormal seen on the mammogram. But I do recommend MRI for high-risk patients. And so these are patients with extremely dense breasts on their mammogram, genetic mutations, so like BRCA1 or BRCA2 mutations, those with a breast cancer index recurrence score of 10% or higher, or those who had a Tyler-Cuzick score of 20% prior to their diagnosis. And for those patients, I recommend annual MRI staggered with the annual mammogram. So every 6 months you're getting some type of imaging. Pelvic exam is recommended yearly for women on tamoxifen because tamoxifen does carry a small risk of uterine cancer. Again, self-awareness, so know your new normal and report changes. This will be an ongoing theme of the talk. Whole body imaging and labs, they're not recommended. There was a meta-analysis showing really no benefit with whole body imaging and labs in terms of impact on overall survival or disease-free survival, so we don't do it routinely. So for uterine cancer screening, history and physical exams, including pelvic exam, every 3 to 6 months for the first 2 to 3 years, and then every 6 to 12 months for up to 5 years. The SGO Choosing Widely guidelines actually recommend against vaginal cytology because it's ineffective to detect a recurrence compared to physical exam. CA-125 is done, which is a tumor marker. It's a blood test, and that's usually done if it was initially elevated or if serous histology. Again, routine imaging is not recommended, and know yourself. For ovarian cancer survivors, the routine follow-up is every 3 months for the first 2 years, then 6 months for 5 years, and then annually. Pelvic exam is done as clinically indicated, and then CA-25 is also done if it was an elevated diagnosis. Routine imaging is only done, there's no routine imaging, but imaging is done if there's clinical suspicion of recurrence or if a patient presents with a rising CA-125. And then if you didn't hear before, self-awareness is very important. With cervical cancer survivor screening guidelines, it's pelvic exams with cervical vaginal inspection every 3 to 6 months for the first 2 years, and then every 6 to 12 months for up to 5 years. Vaginal cuff cytology is recommended if no radiation therapy was given, so if just the uterus and cervix were removed. If radiation therapy was given, then vaginal cuff cytology cervical vaginal cytology is not helpful. HPV co-testing is not typically recommended after radical hysterectomy, and again, routine imaging not recommended, and self-awareness is very important. So I am going to talk about long-term side effects from treatment. So bone health, this is probably the most common one I see in clinic. We typically use DEXA scans to evaluate bone density. So this uses a low-dose X-ray to take pictures of the bone, and you can see an image over here. So who do we screen? So all women over the age of 65 start DEXA scan screenings. Women from ages 60 to 64 with family history of osteoporosis, those with weight less than 70 kilograms, a history of non-traumatic fracture, or any other risk factors such as smoking or alcohol use should be screened. And then I will do a DEXA scan prior to starting an aromatase inhibitor on all my postmenopausal females, as well as yearly while they're on an aromatase inhibitor, because the aromatase inhibitors can lead to the development of osteoporosis by decreasing estrogen. Premenopausal who develop treatment-related premature menopause should also be screened. So this is a lot of females who have had hysterectomies, oophorectomies, and are also have basically chemotherapy-induced menopause. So prevention treatment, what can we do about this? Calcium and vitamin D are the mainstay of supplementation during osteopenia. So the way bone density is evaluated, you have normal bone density, then osteopenia, which is low bone density, and then osteoporosis, which is very low bone density, which increases risk of fracture. So we want to prevent development of osteoporosis. So if someone comes to me and their DEXA scan shows osteopenia, I immediately start them on calcium and vitamin D supplementation. If they have normal bone density and I'm starting an aromatase inhibitor, a lot of times I will also start vitamin D supplementation, especially if their vitamin D level is, not, as long as their vitamin D level is not like above 80 or 100. Bisphosphonates is a class of drugs that inhibits the osteoclasts, which are the cells that break down the bone. And it can be given as a pill weekly, or it can be given as a yearly infusion. And so this helps strengthen the bones. And typically it's given in osteoporosis, but we also will offer it to patients with worsening DEXA scans while they're on like an aromatase inhibitor. So that way we prevent development of osteoporosis. Prolia, same thing. It's an injection given every 6 months, and this also inhibits osteoclasts through a different mechanism than the bisphosphonates. So that's another way we can treat osteoporosis and also prevent osteoporosis in women with osteopenia on aromatase inhibitors. And then, as we heard earlier, weight-bearing exercises is one of the mainstay treatments for osteoporosis and prevention. So, I always recommend walking, trying to walk 60 minutes 5 days a week. If you're able to run, then 30 minutes 5 days a week, and then incorporating strength training 2 to 3 times a week. So I wanted to talk quickly about fertility after breast cancer treatment. And, first I do want to say that pregnancy does not negatively impact survival in women with a history of breast cancer. So infertility is common due to chemotherapy-related gonadotoxicity. So this is through destruction of the ovarian follicles, impaired egg maturation, and reduced egg quality. The general recommendation is to wait 2 years from the time of diagnosis before attempting pregnancy, just to make sure there's no early cancer recurrence. But there is data to suggest that pregnancy sooner than 2 years is safe. In general, most of the studies I was reading, 6 months is, you don't want to try before 6 months after your treatment is finished. There was a trial showing that temporary interruption of endocrine therapy to attempt pregnancy did not confer greater short-term risk at 3-year follow-up. So in this trial, most of the women were stage 1 or stage 2, and they had received at least 18 months of endocrine therapy. And the 3-year incidence of breast cancer events was 9% in both groups, and this was compared to an external cohort. So they didn't actually compare it head-to-head in the trial. They just compared it to a woman as not part of the trial, like what the average is. And half these patients resumed therapy within 2 years after treatment interruption. So if you do want to conceive after breast cancer treatment, you want to wait 3 months after stopping tamoxifen or 7 months after finishing trastuzumab, which is a HER2-targeted agent. And this is just to reduce risk to the fetus. Contraception. So the NCCN panel does recommend to avoid hormonal contraception in women with a current or past history of breast cancer. The low-dose levonorgestrel IUD, that is, it probably is okay, but there's no data validating this. And I do get asked about this quite a bit. There was a retrospective study showing about a 5% increased risk with the levonorgestrel IUD, but this was not statistically significant. So, it is an option. We don't know if it does provide an actual increase in risk or not. I always try to recommend using non-hormonal methods such as like a copper IUD or other methods of contraception. So cardiac health, there's a small but increased risk of high blood pressure and diabetes after treatment. And this is mostly due to anthracycline chemotherapy and HER2 targeting agents such as trastuzumab. Anthracycline-induced cardiotoxicity is dose-dependent, so the more you get, the more likely you are to get cardiotoxicity. With our breast cancer treatment protocols, the anthracycline dose that you get is usually less than is needed for cardiac toxicity. Short term, it can present as heart failure or arrhythmias, and long term, it usually presents as heart failure. So that's the decreased ejection fraction or pump function of the heart. With trastuzumab-related cardiotoxicity, this can occur anytime, and it's not dose-related. So it typically presents as heart failure, so decreased ejection fraction. And this is why we get echoes while on trastuzumab every 3 months. Risk factors are age greater than 50, obesity, a history of hypertension or heart failure, and a history of previous anthracycline chemotherapy. The newer HER2 agents appear to be much less cardiotoxic, but we still will do every 3-month echoes while patients are on these. So what are some interventions that can be done? So the Mediterranean diet, as we heard earlier, is I think the best diet to follow. It's the heart-healthy diet, it's anti-inflammatory, and it really has shown a lot of evidence based in terms of overall health and reducing cancer recurrence. In terms of supplements, CoQ10, there was a small study with about 100 patients that received 200 milligrams twice a day of CoQ10 with anthracycline chemotherapy and trastuzumab chemotherapy, and there was a reduction in the in the decline of the ejection fraction. So not as drastic heart failure. Also, inflammatory biomarkers and markers of cardiac insult were decreased with the CoQ10. And the thought about this is, CoQ10 is a powerful antioxidant, and it really does help with mitochondrial function. The heart has a bunch of mitochondria in it. It's the powerhouse of your body. And so it really does depend on that mitochondria, which the CoQ10 can upregulate. Quercetin, it's a flavonoid, so it's a plant compound with potent anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties, and it also increases mitochondrial function. In vitro studies, so that's studies outside the body, have shown improvement in cardiac cell lines by reducing cell death and stimulating repair. In vivo, so in the body, so in rat models, it's actually shown an anti-tumor effect of chemotherapy while reducing cardiac toxicity. There are small studies underway looking at quercetin with chemotherapy, and the dose is typically around 500 milligrams daily. Resveratrol, similar to quercetin, it's a polyphenol, and this is possibly why red wine is beneficial for the heart. It is shown to have a benefit in vitro and in vivo studies with mice, and the dose is typically 250 to 500 milligrams a day. Alpha-lipoic acid, this is a very potent antioxidant. There was another study done with about 64 females looking at alpha-lipoic acid, and this was a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial, so they compared it to a placebo. And although it did not improve ejection fraction, it did show a significant decline in markers of cardiac insults, such as BNP, TNF-alpha, MD, and neurotensin. So it did show promising results. Additionally, it also, in the same trial, they had given a questionnaire to look at neuropathy, and it did improve neuropathy after 12 weeks. Which takes me to my next topic of neuropathy. So this is most commonly secondary to taxane and platinum chemotherapy. So for our breast and gynecologic cancer patients, it's mostly carboplatin, paclitaxel, Taxotere. Those are the chemos that fall under that category. Up to 40% of patients will still experience neuropathy at 2 years. So that's quite a bit. Duloxetine, it has been shown in multiple studies. So duloxetine it's an antidepressant. It has been shown in multiple studies to reduce pain associated with neuropathy. So it won't reduce the numbness and tingling sensation, but it will reduce that pain that's associated with that. And it has about a 20% reduction in across multiple studies. Exercise is, I would say, the single most impactful intervention for neuropathy. There was a large study done with about 5,400 patients that found that exercise did reduce chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy in a dose-dependent manner. So the more you exercised, the more benefit you got. And the benefit, again, was more pronounced in those with moderate to high intensity exercise as compared to low intensity exercise. And so I found this chart here basically showing what would be considered light, moderate, and vigorous. So, washing dishes, it's still some type of light exercise, but, walking, I would say, is a great, yard work, swimming, those things are all things that fall under the moderate category. Acupuncture has also been shown in trials with chemotherapy to improve neuropathy, and this is usually done 2 to 3 times a week. So it's not, so it is a little bit more frequent than just coming in weekly. And this was mainly showed benefit in women who received taxane chemotherapy. I urge everyone to have their vitamin D levels checked. Low vitamin D has been linked to the development of peripheral neuropathy and also the sustenance of neuropathy, post chemotherapy. So it's very important to get that checked. Omega-3 fatty acids, there's been multiple small studies showing that it does help chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy amongst all different types of cancer compared to, placebo. And most of the studies that were done had about 40 to 50 patients. So again, they were small studies. And the dose was about 600 milligrams per day minimum. Some went up to about 2 grams a day. Glutamine, so there was I just wanted to say a quick word about this. There was an interesting multi-center double-blind placebo-controlled trial in women with ovarian cancer who had received carbotaxol plus glutamine. And they received the glutamine as a powder 3 times a day, and then during and 3 weeks post-chemo. And although there was not a reduction in the number of women who got neuropathy, there was a reduction in the severity of neuropathy. So maybe it does show some promise in the future. And alpha-lipoic acid I already talked about previously. So cognitive dysfunction or chemo brain. So this is a very common complaint I see after chemotherapy, and oftentimes it's kind of pushed aside by other providers, but it is a very real problem. It's persistent cognitive deficits experienced by cancer survivors during or after chemotherapy, often affecting mainly memory, attention and focus, executive function, processing speed, and word finding. The mechanisms for this is, basically direct neurotoxicity from the chemotherapy, neuroinflammation, oxidative stress, hormonal effects, disrupted neurogenesis, and sleep disturbances. High-risk patients are those age greater than 50, women with a history of anxiety, depression, or insomnia, and postmenopausal females. So treatments, again, I would say exercise is probably one of the main treatments for this. Aerobic exercise, it's shown to improve cognitive function and reduce fatigue. Sleep hygiene, so sleeping at the same time every night, using your bed just to sleep, not taking naps throughout the day, not drinking coffee too late. So practicing good sleep habits. Nutrition, following an anti-inflammatory diet. There's been a lot of studies now showing that there is a connection between the gut and brain. So when you're eating a lot of inflammatory foods, that does cause brain fog. So eating an anti-inflammatory diet like the Mediterranean diet, it has been shown to improve cognitive function. Mindfulness and meditation, and with that also acupuncture. Cognitive training with memory exercises and brain games. Again, omega-3 fatty acids have been shown in small randomized controlled trials to improve memory and attention. The mechanism for this is it's anti-inflammatory. It does promote neuronal membrane fluidity and supports the formation of new neurons. A higher omega-3 intake was associated with better cognitive performance post-chemotherapy. And in a lot of these trials, the dose was higher at 1 to 2 grams of combined EPA, DHA daily. Vitamin D, I cannot stress the importance of this. It's neuroprotective, modulates inflammation and actually supports neurotransmitter synthesis. A low vitamin D level was actually correlated with worse cognition in cancer survivors. So supplementation has been shown to improve like depression, fatigue, and also most likely cognition. Curcumin, this was an interesting one I had seen. So basically, curcumin's a potent antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, And there's been no actual studies showing reduction in chemo-induced neurotoxicity, but there's been preclinical studies showing benefit, and it's also shown success in cognitive disorders like Alzheimer's in smaller studies. There was one case study I did, this is why I put it on there, there's a case study I did see of a 76-year-old breast cancer survivor who received curcumin for 3 months. And she, her MoCA score, which is basically a type of cognitive assessment score, went from having mild cognitive impairment of score of 22 to 26, which was normal. And that was only after 3 months. So, does show some promise there. And then mushroom coffee, this has been gaining a lot of traction. It has been shown to in other parts to help with attention and focus. So it's something worth trying, especially if you're a coffee drinker. Trying mushroom coffee instead of regular coffee might be something you can switch out for. I will say though, you have to be careful where you get it. You want to make sure you're getting it from a clean source, and doesn't have any other additives. So this brings me to our lifestyle changes, so diet. And we heard about this earlier, so I won't go into this too detailed, but basically the goals of post-cancer nutrition is to lower recurrence risk, promote metabolic health, support the immune function, minimize cancer treatment-related side effects, and improve your quality of life. So what to eat? Again, balanced diet. I know we've already heard this today, so I won't go too much into it, but Mediterranean diets are evidence-based. There's actually an inverse relationship between adherence to the Mediterranean diet and breast cancer recurrence. Also, there was a study done showing that those on the Mediterranean diet intervention had a 57% lower risk in the development of endometrial cancer. So that's a huge risk reduction. And again, focusing on anti-inflammatory focus, so reducing chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation can promote cancer cell growth, so we want to reduce inflammation in the body. Can do it through foods like extra virgin olive oil, turmeric, green tea, omega-3 rich fish such as salmon and sardines, and limiting refined sugar, processed meats, saturated fats. You want to balance your macronutrients, so make sure you're getting adequate protein, especially in the recovery phase. You want to make sure you're building that muscle mass back and avoiding sarcopenia. High fiber is very important. So this is, fiber supports hormone regulation, reduces estrogen reabsorption, promotes gut health. So very important to increase fiber. And healthy fats. So this is like nuts and avocados. So just diet, 2 trials of diet and breast cancer I wanted to go over. One is the Women's Interventional Nutrition Study, the WIN study. So this randomized 2,400 females with early stage breast cancer to a low-fat dietary intervention versus a control group. And after about 5.5 years, the group with low-fat diet actually did have an improved disease-free survival with a 24% lower risk of recurrence. After longer-term follow-up, there was actually no difference in disease-free survival between the 2 groups. But when they did an exploratory subgroup analysis, so they evaluated different subgroups in the study, they actually found those with hormone receptor negative breast cancer continue to derive a disease-free benefit. So, low-fat diet. For the Women's Healthy Eating and Living the Well trial, this was about 1,500 females with early-stage breast cancer, and they had a low-fat, high-fruit and vegetable diet versus a control group. And after about 7 years, there was no difference between the 2 groups in terms of rate of recurrence. It was about 17% in both groups. So conflicting outcomes, these are like the 2 big studies. Some argue that the benefit derived in the first trial was actually due to a reduction in obesity, but it's hard to say. All in all, I do think diet does play a very important role in breast cancer, and we do need to follow an anti-inflammatory and high-fiber diet. I get asked this a lot as well. So does soy cause breast and endometrial cancer? The short answer is no. So soy is actually a great source of phytoestrogens, which are naturally occurring plant substances consisting of isoflavones and ligands. And they have a chemical structure similar to 17-beta estradiol. There was a meta-analysis done in 2014 that showed, and it was done in Asian countries looking at soy and cancer risk, and it actually showed a protective effect of soy in both pre- and postmenopausal women. However, in pooled studies in Western countries did not actually show a statistically significant benefit with soy. And why is that? Because I think in a lot of Western countries our soy is more processed. So processed soy is not recommended at all. But soy itself does not increase the risk of cancer. And this takes me to the kind of the next topic of what you eat. It's what you eat, but also like how nutrient dense, how minimally processed is your food, how anti-inflammatory is your food. That also impacts outcome. So if you're eating, you know, like processed meat, yeah, you're getting your protein, but you're also getting all these other harmful substances in your food as well. So I always encourage patients to try to stick to organic foods as much as possible. So there was a large study that looked at 69,000 participants, and out of those 69,000, about 1,300 had any type of cancer diagnosis. And what they found was an inverse relationship between organic food consumption and cancer diagnosis. So other trials haven't confirmed this, but I do think that, you know, trying to eat organic is the best way to go. Avoiding endocrine disruptors and environmental toxins. So this is like BPA, phthalates, pesticides, herbicides. So a lot of times in our non-organic foods, there's no regulations about like herbicides and pesticides. So that's where that organic component comes in. And also just endocrine disruptors and environmental toxins can be found in you know, clothing, mattresses, you know, and a lot of things. So just reading about, you know, what you're using on your body on a daily basis, I think, is a very important component. And then minimizing plastic use, as I have my plastic water bottle here. So intermittent fasting, this has gained a lot of traction as well. So what, you know, there's been kind of mixed studies on this, and so what is the mechanism of which this can actually reduce cancer recurrence? So one is metabolic reprogramming, so reducing insulin resistance. You know, autophagy activation, so getting rid of damaged organelles and damaged cells with fasting, so it improves cleanup and can remove those precancer cells. Anti-inflammatory effects, and where this comes in is whenever, in a lot of, the truth is a lot of people today do have some form of leaky gut. So when you're eating food, there is some crossing of that gut barrier, and that can cause inflammatory effects in the body. So when you have a fasting period, you're giving your body a rest from that inflammation period. Hormonal modulation. So the clinical trials on this are limited. It has shown metabolic improvement in cancer survivors, so improvement in insulin resistance, and there was also one study showing improved chemotherapy tolerance. So they looked at, you know, all comers, so any type of cancer, and they found that patients that actually did intermittent fast or have a certain time period in which they ate actually had better tolerance to chemotherapy. And then again, weight and insulin reduction. So the limitations on intermittent fasting are basically it can exacerbate malnutrition. So already, you know, when you're undergoing treatment, and after treatment, you might, you know, have lost a lot of muscle mass and not be, you know, with optimum, you know, body fat percentage and muscle mass. So this can exacerbate that. So you want to, you know, be careful of that. And then a lot of the trials, there was variability in the fasting interval. So some of them had like an 8-hour interval in which you ate 16 hours off. Some was like 12 and 12. So we don't know what the best solution is in terms of that. And then there's no actual randomized controlled trials showing that intermittent fasting works. I personally believe that the way intermittent fasting is actually beneficial is it actually helps you be accountable to eat a less amount, because you're not then snacking at like midnight when you might feel a little hungry. So it makes you eat at a certain period of time so that you're not, you know, over consuming food. I think that's where the benefit mostly lies. And our favorite topic from today, alcohol and breast cancer. So is alcohol safe? Unfortunately, any amount of alcohol does increase the risk of breast cancer. There's no safe threshold. Even 1 drink a day does increase the risk of breast cancer. For each additional 1 drink, the breast cancer risk does increase by 7 to 10%. And again, it's a dose-dependent relationship. So the more you drink, the higher the risk. And cumulative dose does matter. So if you did binge drink back in college, that still will matter today, unfortunately. So
Uh-oh, there's lots of comments on that one, Dr. Sachdev. Everyone's getting a good giggle out of that one.
So just with alcohol and hormone-positive breast cancer, there's an increased risk, especially of hormone-positive breast cancer. And this is mainly due to increased circulating estrogen. So alcohol, it does impair liver metabolism so that estrogen cannot be cleared as efficiently. It also increases aromatase activity, so that's the enzyme that makes estrogen. So you have increased estrogen in the body. And then it also produces a byproduct of estrogen metabolism or alcohol metabolism is acetaldehyde. And this is carcinogenic and can basically damage the DNA, and it can also inhibit repair enzymes. So not a great thing for us. So the ASCO guideline is to avoid it altogether or no more than 1 drink per week. So if any of you had plans tonight, sorry to ruin them. With gynecologic cancers, it's not as strongly associated with ovarian cancer risk. Heavy alcohol intake, so this is greater than 3 drinks per day, was shown to increase risk, and this is mainly through like oxidative damage and hormonal disruption. With endometrial cancer, there's mixed evidence, so low alcohol, especially low to moderate intake, is probably okay, but heavy did show increased risk. And again, with endometrial cancer, the main risk factor is mostly through like insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. With cervical cancer, there was a higher alcohol intake was associated with increased risk, and this is not due to estrogen metabolism. This is actually due to impaired immune function, which can hinder HPV clearance and also worsen folate deficiency, which can lead to methylation changes. And then obesity and cancer risk, we've heard about this a lot today too. So obesity is a known risk factor for multiple different cancers, especially our hormone-positive breast cancer and endometrial cancer. It's also linked to a higher risk of recurrence and mortality. The mechanisms for this, or why obesity can lead to cancer, is 1, estrogen excess. So adipose tissue, which is our fat cells, they have aromatase, which is the enzyme, again, that makes estrogen. So in obesity, we have increased adipose tissue, so increased estrogen production. It's also chronic inflammation, so adipose tissue secretes pro-inflammatory cytokines that can promote tumor growth. Insulin resistance, hormonal dysregulation, and adipokines. So this is basically cytokines from the fat that basically can promote tumor growth and tumor genesis. So even a 5 to 10% weight loss can really improve outcomes.
Dr. Sachdev, just a reminder, we have 10 minutes left. So
okay, I'll go a little faster. So
you don't have to go faster. We just want to keep our time.
So with breast cancer specifically, again, just to reiterate, obesity is at the time of diagnosis is a risk factor for poor prognosis in early stage breast cancer. Also, weight gain during chemotherapy is another negative negative prognostic factor. And then even after, obesity does carry a higher risk of recurrence. And I know by our treatments, we're putting patients through menopause, we're decreasing estrogen, which is going to increase weight gain. So, diet, exercise, those things are going to be important, but I think also optimizing your, mitochondrial function, optimizing your micronutrient deficiencies is going to be very, very impactful. For each 5-unit increase in BMI, there's about a 12 to 20% increased risk of breast cancer in postmenopausal women and about a 17 to 30% increased risk in all-cause mortality after diagnosis. And for gynecologic cancers, endometrial cancer is the one that's most strongly associated with obesity, and with every 5-unit increase in BMI raises the risk by 50%, so substantially, yeah. With ovarian cancer, the risk is mild to moderate, about a 10 to 20% increased risk. And with cervical cancer, there's a weaker association overall, and usually that's also due to more immune dysfunction related to obesity rather than actual estrogen metabolism. So exercise, I cannot stress how important exercise is. In breast cancer, there's a 20 to 30% lower risk of developing breast cancer in women that were the most physically active as compared to the least active. The postmenopausal women derive the most benefit from this. And the risk reduction that is seen in both is seen in both hormone positive and hormone negative breast cancers, although it's stronger for hormone positive. And it's a dose response relationship. So the more active you are, the greater the benefit. So even something helps, even if it's just walking for 10 minutes a day, that's still something. The recommendation is about 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity or 75 minutes a week of vigorous intensity aerobic exercise, plus 2 days of strength training. And as I mentioned previously, exercise does have additional benefits for survivors in terms of neuropathy, heart health, chemo brain. So just a great way to improve your overall health. And again, in endometrial cancer, there's a 20 to 40% lower risk in women that were physically active compared to those who were not. And again, the mechanism is thought to be due to a decrease in estrogen, a decrease in insulin resistance, and decrease in inflammation. Ovarian cancer, there's again a modest inverse association between physical activity and ovarian cancer risk, about 10 to 20%. And with cervical cancer, it's less clear. The last thing I want to touch base on is vitamin D. So vitamin D, I think, is one of the most important and the most important things we can optimize in all our patients. So the vitamin D receptor is expressed in reproductive tissues and breast tissue. The active form is involved in multiple different pathways. Those are inhibiting cell proliferation, causing healthy cell death, anti-angiogenesis, immune modulation, and estrogen synthesis. So, there's been a lot of trials looking at vitamin D and breast cancer, and most of them have shown an inverse association between the circulating vitamin D levels and breast cancer risk. There was a meta-analysis that pooled a bunch of trials, and it showed that women with the highest vitamin D levels had a 27% lower risk of breast cancer compared to those who had the lowest vitamin D levels. And the recommendation was maintaining a level of around maintaining a level of equal to or above 40 to reduce breast cancer incidence. There was a large randomized control trial done, the VITAL study, which actually didn't show any significant reduction in breast cancer incidence with vitamin D supplementation of 2,000 units a day. This trial, however, was not specifically powered for breast cancer. And then there was another one that did show that women receiving vitamin D and calcium had reduced cancer risk, including breast cancer. So a lot of data on either no, it's not very helpful, or it is helpful. So the takeaway I say is, there was no study showed a negative impact of vitamin D on survival. So it is basically a useful, non-toxic, and inexpensive way to improve survival and possibly improve survival in women with breast cancer. So I always check vitamin D levels. I try to maintain it about 40 to 80 usually. Anything above 100 is too much. The Endocrine Society guidelines are 50 to 100 for bone health. So I would not go over 100. So if you're at 80, you probably don't need supplementation. But if you're between that 40 to 80 range, you probably could have some benefit. Vitamin D and gynecologic cancer risk. So there was an inverse association observed between vitamin D levels and ovarian cancer risk in observational studies. Higher serum vitamin D levels was associated with a moderately reduced risk of ovarian cancer. In endometrial cancer, there was no strong association between vitamin D and endometrial cancer risk, but vitamin D was seen more in vitamin D deficiency seen more in obese patients, and that plays a role in endometrial cancer. So maybe an indirect link there. With cervical cancer, it was interesting. Vitamin D supplementation did show an improvement in cervical intraepithelial neoplasia, which can be a precursor for cervical cancer. And so, there's probably a role of vitamin D in prevention of cervical cancer in terms of immune modulation to help with HPV clearance. So with that, I thought this quote would be very appropriate for today. It's possible not just to survive, but to thrive and to live a healthy, wonderful life again. Thank you.